Hello, and welcome to another episode of Undiscovered Beasts and Strange Phenomena. Please join our experienced and knowledgeable panel of hosts as we explore the great mysteries of our time: Bigfoot, UFOs, ghosts, and unexplained phenomena.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Glances Through the Veil. I'm Vanessa Hogle, your host for all things paranormal and supernatural. Tonight we will be discussing attachments. Where do they come from? Why do they happen? And most importantly, how to get rid of them. This is the crazy thing about attachments. This is what a lot of people don't want to talk about, is how many different types there actually are. There can be demonic attachments. There can be spirit or ghost attachments. You can actually get a residue from residual energy, and you can get attachments to objects, things that you might pick up from a location, purchase at a flea market or a thrift store. There could be so many different ways to get an attachment from an object. So what we're going to do tonight is go ahead and start with the smallest one, and that's the attachments in regards to objects. This is something that people really have to deal with a lot for one main reason, and it's kind of funny. It's because they want to take something away from a location. They want to take something that means something to them or means something to the location or as a trophy. This could not be a worse thing to do. It really couldn't be, and I'm going to tell you why. When you're talking about a haunted location that has layers and layers and layers, like an onion, of different historical events or different things that have happened with many different personalities, that energy embeds itself into the very land or the objects that have been there. So when you go to an old location, like myself when I was in England, you go to an old location and you take a piece of the brick or mortar from one of the buildings. You take anything that has to do with the land as regards to dirt from a graveyard, anything like that. You have to be super duper careful because that energy is embedded into that stuff, and you will bring that back home with you. Now, when you're talking about attachments to objects or things like that, brick and mortar, dirt, a hairbrush that's from the Victorian era that was left in a trunk in a house that you went and investigated in, or an old mirror that you found in a thrift store, what you have to be aware of is what can come with that and what gives you an idea that it might have an attachment to it. One of the things that I have found most common is an itchy or numbing feeling on your skin. This sounds so strange. This sounds very strange, I know, but if you could almost imagine that your skin feels as if it's going to sleep, like if you sat on your foot too long, but it could be in any different part of you, especially in your hand. If you're holding that mirror, you're holding that brush, and you notice that there is a different feeling to that, most people will not automatically recognize that as an attachment, or they'll automatically assume it's evil. Either one can be detrimental. And so that's where you kind of need to make sure that you know what you're doing, that you know what you're picking up, and that you know how to deal with it if there is any type of energy attached to it. Standard operating procedure when it comes to something like that is saging. That needs to be first and foremost of anything that you do in regards to bringing something home from an investigation or something that has many years attached to it. For those of us that like thrift store shopping or antique store shopping, we need to be very, very, very aware that what we're bringing home, whether we're paranormal investigators or not, did belong to somebody else, and odds are it has a great deal of energy attached to it, a great deal of love, a great deal of fear, anger, sadness. It could be any emotion. And we will be absorbing that by having it in our presence. So you need to make sure that you sage. That isn't a thing. You don't have to. But what you do have to do is make sure that you're claiming it as your own, if at all possible. cleansing it in the best way that you can, simply smudging it with sage smoke and letting it rest. A wonderful way to do that is to put it on the windowsill, if it's small enough, and allow it to cleanse itself in the moonlight if I'm going to go all witchy on you, which I will. Be prepared for that in the future, folks. That is the same thing you would do with stones. Very, very, very much what I recommend you doing that with stones, especially if they've been given to you by another. Stones are something that holds on to energy as well. So as you would do with your stones or crystals, I want you to do with something that you may pick up at a location. That having been said, if you are paying to go to a location, you're going to go on a public haunt, you're going to do all that, please, please, please do not do this. Do not pick something up. Do not bring it home with you, especially if a place that you're going has a negative history. I firmly believe that should be common sense, but unfortunately it is not. So I'm just going to go ahead and reiterate that to you right now. The other thing that we need to talk about when it comes to any type of attachment is residual energy or the residue. This varies greatly in regards to a spirit or ghost attachment. This is not the same thing, and that is something that isn't talked about enough when it comes to the paranormal or the supernatural field. Residual energy is a frozen time at a place. It is habitual in nature. It is like clockwork. Doesn't mean it's every day like clockwork. It could be the third Thursday of the 5th month once a year. But if it happens at the same time, at the same place, in the same fashion, that is residual. That residual energy is not an intelligent haunting. It does not interact, but it can leave a residue on you. Whatever the emotion was at that time, whenever that particular instance was embedded in time, was laying on that area and forced to remain, for lack of a better way of putting it. It's kind of like a time stamp, and that stamp never goes away because you can't reason with it. You can't help it move forward. So it is a forever instance. That forever instance can still leave its residue on you, that residual energy. The way that you know if you have residual energy or residue on you is a general feeling of unease. Really all it is. Now, we can assume, as I have, as everybody else out there has, that is automatically a spirit attached to us. Automatically. That is the go-to that people have in regards to that type of attachment, and that simply is not the case. When it comes to a residue like that and you have that general feeling of unease, it will actually start to go away a little bit. It'll diminish over time. It will diminish even quicker with meditation, with smudging yourself, with a cleanse, salt bath, standing under the moonlight, a simple ringing of bells to clear the energy from around your person. That will actually diminish that residue that you have on your body from that. Where that differs from the spirit or the ghost attachment is if it's a spirit or a ghost, it will not. It will not dissipate. And this is where things get kind of hinky. Okay? This is where they get really crazy. When it is an intelligent haunting, when it is something that has seen you as a comrade, as somebody that it feels an affinity to, or feels like you've struck an accord because you were able to communicate. It doesn't really want to give that up. And I want you to think about that. I want you to think about why that is. Why does it not want to give that up? Are there additional messages that if it stays with you, it feels like it might be able to give you, and you might be able to pass that on? I think that's really important to think about because we tend to look, due to all of the programming that's out there and everything else, we tend to look at spirits or ghosts as less than human. So if they have that affinity towards us, so they feel like there is a relationship that has been started through the levels of communication that you've already had, they're very much like us. They're not inhuman anymore since they don't have a body. They are very, very much somebody that needs to have a way to interact and to feel appreciated and to feel acknowledged and to know that what they have to say is still important. So before I tell people to automatically sage and get rid of those attachments, I ask them first, are you actually feeling fear? And do you feel as if your person is being invaded in a negative way? And what I mean by that, and it's really not a difficult question, and it's one that I want everybody to think about. When you've been to a place and you've had that communication and you've spoken with the spirits, and you can tell that you've brought them home with you, have they done anything to injure you? Or are they making you feel in a negative way? Is that negative way actually making you feel fear? Are they bothering your family? Are they intruding in your life in a way that is unacceptable? Or can you just feel them? Most people can mistake just feeling them for them being negative, for them being intrusive. And that simply, nothing could be further from the truth. So when you ask yourself these questions and you come up with the answers that show that they're not negative, that they don't have any type of ill will towards you and are just wanting to see if they can continue the communication, you have a very real and a very important choice to make. Are you going to force them away from you? Or are you going to allow them to continue communicating? I do not judge either person's choice. I think it's one that you have to make on your own. But it is one that I ask people to consider greatly, because sometimes the messages don't come in a 2-hour investigation period or a 4-hour investigation period. Sometimes it takes weeks. Sometimes it takes months. Sometimes it takes even longer than that. And if it was my deceased relative or somebody that I wanted to get information from so that I could help others with that information, I don't want them to leave that fast. I want to be able to get that from them. That having been said, if they are negative, and when I say negative, there are very specific things you need to look for. Lethargy, strange dreams, something that causes you in regards to the dreams to not be able to get the rest that you need. Are they being invasive? Are they being manipulative? Are you feeling feelings that are not your own? Don't forget, most of us that do something like this, and even those of us who don't, we're not even aware that we have empathic abilities. And if you don't know what empathic abilities are, those are something that allows you to feel the emotion of others. That can be anger, that can be fear, that can be joy, it can be sadness. It doesn't matter what it is. It can even be something very benign, where if you are feeling that energy from another person and there is a reason you should feel exuberant or angry and you just can't find it in yourself to do so, then you might be pulling the benign energy from somebody else that's causing you to be unreactionary instead of reactionary. So it's these little nuances that you really have to consider. But if what you are feeling is negative and it is causing an issue in your life, and it is causing an issue with your family, then that is something that you need to take very seriously. And it can take, depending on the attachment and depending on how much it wants to be a part of you, that can take quite a bit of time to get rid of. And I'm going to give you an example. I have many attachments. And before you start yelling at me, saying that, Vanessa, you're telling everybody what to do to get rid of them, and yet you still have them, there's a very good reason for that. I have familial attachments. I have those that are my family members who have passed on, that of course I'm not going to tell them to go away. Of course I'm not going to do that. I mean, I love the fact that they care and that they're with me. Not all the time. You know, they're not here 24/7, but they're with me when they feel like I need them to be. And so I appreciate that, and I appreciate that guidance. I, however, also have attachments that are not good. And I have attachments. I have a single attachment that has had the history with me of being very brutal. I have had many instances where I have woken up with bruises all over my body, in places that I can't put bruises, in the shape of hands, in directions my hands don't go, all different sizes. My hands are only one size. And I've actually written about this in one of my books. I believe it was Walking with Ghosts. And I went into great detail about that. And that attachment is one that has actually been with me in many, many, many lives. And he feels exceptionally protective, but also possessive of me. And I went for many moons not knowing quite what to do in regards to that. And I allowed myself to be hurt. I allowed myself to be brutalized to a certain degree. And I allowed an immense amount of lost sleep due to all this. And it didn't matter with him what type of saging I did. It didn't matter what type of prayers I did or spell work I did or anything that I did. I could not get him to loosen his grip until I outed him. And that is probably one of the most difficult things to do when it comes to an attachment like that, is to take away their power by telling others about them. And that is something that I've noticed in the paranormal community, that we all seem to believe in this stuff, but when someone comes at us with this fantastical story, we don't believe it. And I'm just as guilty as anybody else. If somebody came to me and told me the story that I just told you, I would nod and smile for a moment, and then I would be thinking in my head, there's no way. There's absolutely no way that has happened. The me 3 or 4 years ago would have done exactly that. The me today, listen. And I understand the importance of getting that information out there, because some of those attachments simply need to have the shades thrown up and the light splashed on them. That's what they need in order to lose their grip. Others, the simple sage works great 1, 2, 3, or 4 times. That's the other thing. A lot of people assume that in order to get rid of an attachment, you can go home, you can sage, you can tell it to go away, and all is right with the world. And the fact of the matter is, that's just not true. It really does depend on its level of strength, its need for attachment, and how much it wants to stay. And you could work for weeks or months trying to get it to loosen its grip. You truly could. And that is not something even as severe as the one that I have. That could be, you've went to a haunted location and there is a woman there that feels a connection with you if you're a woman. She can sense the connectivity between her past and what she went through and your past, and she understands that there is a sistership there. I've been through this as well. And what's interesting about that is this woman would not mean to be negative. She would not mean to bring that type of energy to you, but she sensed a camaraderie, like I said, a sisterhood. And for a moment, she didn't feel alone. And she's not going to want to give that up. So that's something that you also have to consider when you're talking about attachment. Even if they feel negative, research it. Research it. Find out why it's happening. We can't be in this field trying to do what we do and get scared at every little turn. You simply will be no good. You will be of no use if you get frightened of the very thing that you're asking for. And before you josh at me on that one, I'm going to tell you right now, I can't tell you how many shows on TV or YouTube that I hear people say these very words, and that is, show yourself, use my energy. Y'all, where do you think attachments come from? You're inviting a spirit or a ghost or something, I'm going to go ahead and say it, demonic, because we're getting ready to get into that as well, but you're inviting them into your energy. You have opened up the door and laid out the red carpet. You've said it's okay. So when that happens, you've kind of given up your right to be upset about it. You know, and I know of which I speak. One of the things that I do on a regular basis is remote viewing and channeling. That's kind of what I'm most known for. And the channeling aspect of it, I am very much inviting people in to my energy, whether I realize it or not, because I choose not to shield. I choose not to close myself off because I don't want to miss a message. This has been to my detriment. I can't lie to you. I have suffered great injury from it, especially in Virginia. I actually came home from one of the trips with feet the size of grapefruits from running barefoot across gravel like an Olympic runner through Hollywood Cemetery. I have been tackled by an ex-Army vet, combat vet, been on the ground in Iraq, had to tackle me in a gravel driveway because I was running towards train tracks to my detriment. So I can't get mad when that happens because I have opened myself up and allowed it. I have said I understand what I'm going to go through, and I'm accepting it. I'm willing to do this for this information. So I will allow that to continue on for as long as I can to get the information that I need. And then I start the process of going ahead and releasing those attachments. I'm not telling y'all to do that. I'm not. Matter of fact, please don't. I'm a do as I say, not as I do gal. But what I am telling you is when you go into this field and you seek out particular locations, knowing what type of energy they have there, and you tell a spirit or a ghost or what have you that in order for them to show themselves, they are allowed to use your energy, you cannot and should not be mad at them when they do exactly that and like it. So that is something that I really want you to consider, especially when it goes into something that is difficult for me to talk about. I'm going to anyway. Part of the reason it's difficult for me to talk about this is I believe it's talked about too much. I believe the D word for demonic is thrown around way too much. I truly do. And in all of my 46 years of actively knowing I was in this realm, in the paranormal field per se, even at 2 years old, I was speaking to ghosts. I've only ever come in contact with something like that once, maybe twice not confirmed, simple feeling. So it isn't as common as people believe it is, but it can happen. And I'm here to tell you I've seen it. And the very real energy that comes off of a being that has never been human is something that's indescribable. Quick little story in regards to that. I was in Virginia working on a case that was involving children. I flew out there because living children were involved, and they were being tormented. And it was just inconceivable what was going on. And during the course of the investigation and during the course of the channeling and the different things that I was doing, we came back to this barn on the property. And I knew right away what it was. I knew that the barn was used for people. I knew what those people were used for. And when I say people, I mean women and small children. So without getting too graphic, I'm sure your mind can follow that route and see exactly where I'm going with that. What I didn't expect was knowing what that was and walking out of the barn only to look on top of it and see something that I can only describe as a human spider, and its legs and arms spanned the entire roof of the barn, those pitches. It was completely perched on top with its arms and legs laid out in spider-like fashion. And it was doing its level best to stare me down and try to attach itself to me. That is something that is not, that is unbelievably rare. It's not normal, and it's extremely frightening. And at that point, I was already so open that I was very, very, scared that it was going to actually happen. And the only thing that saved me from that happening was one of the investigators I was with actually got taken over by a different spirit, and I had to focus on her in order to pull that out. Had that have attached to me, I honestly can't say where I would be right now, and I'm going to give you an example of that. The thing with demonic attachment and what I have known to be true in the past with the very few cases that I'm actually aware of, including the potential case that I would have had to deal with, because I still had residue from it. It took weeks to get over that without even having the full attachment. But what you have to look out for is the highs and lows, which is, it far goes beyond bipolar. And that's, it's really difficult to explain, but imagine your happiest moment and then your almost suicidal moment, all the way down to the ground, the lowest you could possibly be. Then you have a very unnatural extreme anger, one where you could drop a glass of milk and it is as if the world has absolutely ended and you feel murderous. This is not an exaggeration. I'm being very honest with you. Self-harm. Self-harm is a big one, because when you feel that energy in you, all you want to do is get it off of you, to get it out of you. And that is the best way in your mind at the time to be able to do that. That is really what you want to do, is to be able to do that, is to push it out the only way you can. And when you can feel pain that you've caused yourself, that's something that you can control. You're able to control that pain. You know you've caused it. You know you can stop it. And when you're in that mindset that you have lost all control due to this attachment, and you find a little bit in that form, you jump on it. You take it as best you can. You can also deal with, the need for alcohol or substance abuse, which thank goodness I did not, but I do know it to be true. That's one of the ways to drown out those feelings and those voices. Hallucinations, they're horrific. They're absolutely horrific. In my understanding from the research that I have done and from what I felt simply from the residue of what that being was, what we considered to be a low to mid-level demon, it's worse than if you were on PCP or angel dust or any other psychedelics. It is that much worse. It is in such a fashion that it's not like you see in the movies. It's not like that. It's not the flowers that are floating in the air and the strange colors. It's very real. It's very real, and it makes you think it's real. And that's probably the most frightening thing. If it was the psychedelic version with the pinwheels of colors and the strange flowers and the different things like that, somewhere, somehow in your mind, you could justify that as not being your thoughts. But when they make it as real as possible and you can't tell the difference, that is something that will absolutely drive you crazy. And then when you put the loss of sleep on top of that, I did not sleep once I got home from Virginia. And again, this was not a full-on demonic attachment. This was the residue from that demonic activity in that barn. Just the residue. I didn't sleep for 4 days. I couldn't. And then when I started to finally be able to get back to sleep, I was sleeping an hour here, an hour there. So then you have the loss of sleep that lends to making all of these other issues with the attachment that much more difficult. It exacerbates every last one of them. So when you're talking about something like that, it's difficult to get that off of you. What you can only do in regards to that is to block yourself, is to shield yourself at the first negative is in your presence. I can't think of any other thing to tell you to do other than if you're a very religious person and you feel that has happened and there was no way for you to stop it, then by all means, please seek help through whatever religious channels that you absolutely have, whether it is church, whether it's a shaman, whether it's, a witch, whether it's somebody in the pagan community. I don't care who it is. If you feel like you have that negative attachment to you, you must seek assistance. You must. There's just no way to get around it. What you can do in a way to keep it from happening is to listen to yourself, listen to your body, listen to those around you, because hopefully you're not going out and doing this by yourself. Hopefully you're not going out and investigating by yourself, especially at a place that is known for negative activity. And just to give you an idea of exactly how strong this is, and I actually just discussed this through a live feed the other day, I'm pretty tough. I'm a tough cookie, and I have a fairly good grasp on myself, even with the residue from that particular entity. When we went the next day to go ahead and cleanse the house that the people were living in, and to teach them how to do that, because it was going to be an ongoing process. This was not something that was going to happen overnight. Not only were we having to cleanse the property, to cleanse the house, and to cleanse the outlying area directly around the house, they had already been given very real instructions to never step foot over a particular property line leading to that barn. As long as they didn't do that, they were going to be okay in regards to what had set up residents out there. No sooner did we pull up into the driveway of this house to go in and help the family, and it had already been in great discussion that we, of course, after we had already told the family on the phone prior to coming, please don't go out there. So, of course, we weren't going to do it either, right? Wrong. First place I made my beeline to. I had to be pulled away. And it wasn't me doing it. I had absolutely no control. Got out of the car, started walking straight to it, didn't even realize I was doing it. So when I tell you to be very, very, very careful of your energy and of what you allow in, especially during provocation, which we see so much of on some of these shows, I'm being very real with you. I'm being very honest and upfront of the damages that it can do. It can last a very long time. I almost left the paranormal field. And this incident happened, 2020, 4 years ago. Happened about 4 years ago, and maybe a little bit less. And it took all I had. I came home from Virginia to Oklahoma and was like, yep, I'm done. I can't do it anymore. I can't do this. And I didn't even look like the same person. We have video of it. I had lost every personal attribute of myself the 5 days I was there. Everything that made me was gone. I was a shell of who I was. And it took weeks to get that off of me and months to get myself back. It was a very difficult process and one that I would not wish on anybody. So for anyone who is new to the field, who is considering doing some of these things and going to these different locations and trying their hand out, what I want you to do is go into it with an open heart and an open mind, yes. But don't do it alone. Make sure that you have whatever it is that you need on you for protection. That is imperative and of utmost importance. If you feel the Bible is what you need, take it. If you feel a crystal is what you need to have on your person, take it. Don't listen to anyone else when they tell you that won't work. So much of this field is intent and belief. Intent and belief makes up 90% of this field. What is your intentions going into the situation? What is your belief in regards to the situation? The other part that makes it up is how you deal with it. So you need to make sure that you go in with a clear heart, clear mind, good intentions, a strong belief in whatever it is that protects you, and the ability to ascertain when you need to extract yourself from the situation. You must be willing to do that. That is unbelievably important. If the feelings that you're getting when you're at someplace have become too much to bear, there is absolutely no shame in pulling back and saying, I've had enough, I'm done, my safety is more important. And people might scoff at that. They might laugh at that statement, saying, well, nothing's going to happen to you. A ghost's not going to come up and cut you or something like that. It isn't the things that you can see that you need to be afraid of or afraid of taking home to your family. That isn't where the fear lies. The fear lies in what your eyes possibly can't see, but what can see your soul and your energy and how they want to become a part of that. And that's the other thing. When we bring this onto ourselves, whether it's voluntary or involuntary, and we don't do whatever we can in order to get it off of us before we go home, we do take this home to our family. It's not unlike leaving your front door open for a friend, and there's no way to guarantee a stranger following in after them. There is just no way. So there are all different kinds of ways that you can make sure that you're taken care of, that you can make sure that you're not bringing home anything negative to your family. There's a million different ways and a million different opinions on it. And what you have to do is find what works best for you, because everybody is going to be different. If you're unsure of how to shield, talk to somebody. Message me. I'll help you. I have no problem with that. Message me. I will help you how to do it. I have a certain way to do it. My way might not work for you, okay? But it might get you on the road to finding out what does work for you. If you have somebody that has a particular essential oil that you really like, that they say is good for that, and you believe in it, take it. As far as having sage around to smudge yourself or sage your surroundings or to clear the energy after an investigation or after you've just been around people that seem to want to leech onto you, don't think that means that you, if you're a religious person, don't think that means that you don't believe in God. You'll hear that from people as well. You can believe in God and still believe in spirits. You can believe in Allah and still believe in spirits. There's no hard and fast rules on it, save one, and that is always show respect. That's the most important thing. That's to the spirits out there, and that is to yourself. And that's really what we're trying to show here, and that's what I try to show in every live feed I do and in every book I write, is I try to show as much respect as I can, because I'm in hopes of getting that back. That's what I'm looking for. And it's taken me a long time to get there. It's taken me a very long time to get there, but I am getting there. And that's pretty much all I can do. It's going to be a journey until the day I die. And I am blessed to be able to pass what knowledge I ascertained on to others, and hopefully they can take that and turn it into more and grow from it, and we can all start to learn from each other. And I hope that others who listen to this show that have had different experiences, contact us, contact me. Let me know what your experiences are. Let me learn from you. Let me see how they intermingle, how they mesh together, and if there is a commonality to it, or is there something that's completely different that I need to be made aware of so that I can be better protected when I go out into the field. Now, I am eternally grateful for that type of information, and I'll never turn down the chance to listen to it. So I really do appreciate you guys, and I hope everybody has enjoyed themselves. I hope I didn't ramble on too much, and I can't wait to do this again. So until next time, this is Vanessa Hogle, again, your resident chatting lady for all things paranormal and supernatural here on Glances Through the Veil.